You don't need a lot of designs to make awesome projects. In fact, you can use just one design to make tons of awesome projects. Hi, I'm Julie, Fei-Fan Balzer, and today I'm going to show you how to use a single design to make 4 different projects, all for a bachelorette party or a bridal shower. So let me show you what we're going to do. First, we're going to make our own stamped wrapping paper, super cute, easy to do with your ScanNCut. Then we're going to use that same design to make a little bride, would you call it a corsage or a badge, something like that, that she can wear around to know that she's the special one. We're also going to make a card using that same design, and you can see how it's a fun shape, opens right up. It could be the invitation to the party, it could be thank you cards. And then we're going to finish it off by making a fabulous ring using that same design. So let's get started by going right into the machine and choosing our design. From the home screen, I'm going to choose pattern. I'm going to go into the built-in designs and I'm going to choose the design that I want. Now I thought this doily pattern was pretty versatile. So I'm going to choose it. I'm going to leave it at the size that it is. I'm going to say set. Now I want to save it before I do anything to ScanNCut Canvas so that I can manipulate it when we make our card. But in the meantime, the first thing we're doing is we're going to cut our stamp. So I want to put my stamp material onto the mat and get that resized. I have a small scrap of stamp material left. I'm going to go ahead and peel 1/2 of the plastic off, and then I'm going to flip it over so the side with the plastic on it is still up and place it down onto my mat. I can put it anywhere on my mat, and now I'm going to load it into the machine. Once it is loaded into the machine, I'm going to go ahead and scan it in so that I can perfectly place that stamp file and resize it so that it fits on that small scrap of stamp material. I can see my stamp material on the screen. I'm dragging my file. It's obviously too large. I'm going to go into the editing functions, into the resizing, and I'm going to resize it so that it fits. If I'm not sure, I can zoom in up to 400% so that I can really see it. And then I can go ahead and manipulate it around so that it just fits. It looks like it's a skosh too large still, so I'm going to reduce it a teeny bit more. Zoom in one more time. Take another peek at it, and once I'm happy with the placement, that looks good to me. I think it's right in the center there. I'm going to go ahead and say okay, okay again. Now I want to make sure my settings are correct. This is what worked for me when I did a test cut, is a cut speed of 1 and a cut pressure of 5, and I'm using my deep cut blade set to a 6. So I'm simply going to press cut and start. Now that it's done cutting, I'm going to unload the mat and I can pull my stamp right off. And then the hardest part is really getting all the plastic off here, so I'm going to take a minute to do that right now. I have my stamp here and I have a clear acrylic block, and this is simply going to stick right on there. Now I've protected my surface with a piece of paper, and I'm working on this old brown paper. It's sort of an upcycling project. I like things like that. And I have a paint palette here, and I'm putting out some white paint onto here. Now everything you see that's a mess on here is dried paint. I'm thrifty, so I like to work with things. I have a brayer. I'm going to brayer out my paint, making sure to go in 2 different directions. I don't want to have too much paint on here, and neither do I want to have too little. And I'm always rolling in the same direction. Then I'm simply going to apply the paint onto the block. And if you get some on the block, it doesn't really matter. I like that distressed look. Then you simply press down and boom, you have a gorgeous print. And so every single time now, I'm simply going to reapply paint to my stamp, and I'm going to move the stamp around. You can make this as neat or as messy as you want. You could do a clean pattern where they all line up. You can do a pattern where they're kind of zigzaggy and all over. One of the reasons I have the paper underneath is not only because the paint might go through the paper, but also because I want to be able to stamp off the edge like this. This is what really makes it look like a real piece of wrapping paper. And so I want to make sure that I can do that without stamping all over my table or my counter. And I'm just going to keep going until this whole piece of paper is covered with beautiful stamped designs. Once your paper is entirely stamped, you have a couple things to clean. The first is the brayer, which you simply clean by running it over a piece of paper until nothing else comes off the brayer. And if you don't see any more paint come off, then it's clean. To clean your stamp and your block, I just like to use a baby wipe. You can rub it down there, and I will in fact often remove the stamp from the block and then just clean it. You can also put this into running water or a basin of water, just bring it over to a sink. But as soon as you want to do this while the paint is still wet, you do not want to let any paint dry on that stamp. And the same with the block, is you want to just make sure to clean it off while everything's still wet, because then it's easy to do. Now that everything is nice and clean, it's time to move on to making this fabulous ring. So here on my mat, I have some white shrink plastic loaded on. So I'm going to go ahead to the home screen and choose that same pattern. And I'm going to navigate to that design that we've been using. There's my doily. I'm also going to add a test cut because I want to make sure that all of my settings are correct. Now I know that I have some space in the bottom corner, so I'm going to drag that down along with the test cut and say okay. So the settings that I have so far is I have a cut speed of 1, a cut pressure of 5, and I believe my blade is set to a 5 as well. So I'm going to say okay and cut, and let's see how this test cut works out. I want to make sure it hasn't cut through the mat, so I'm feeling the back as I push to pop it out, but it doesn't seem like it quite popped out easily. It was a little tough, so I'm going to up the blade slightly and try another test cut. You can see that I moved the test cut over to a new spot. Now that comes out a little more easily, so I think we're ready to just press start and cut. So I have my cut, and I have put it into a wooden box with a piece of parchment paper at the bottom. And the box is really just to control it from flying around. I'm using a heat gun, and I'm moving it in a circular motion slightly away to melt the shrink plastic and shrink it right up. Shrinks, and while it's still warm, you want to grab that parchment paper and start to curl that up. If you're brave and have hard hands, or you could wear gloves or something, then you can take your fingers and actually scrunch it up, but be really, really careful. This is super hot, warm plastic, and you know, if your fingers aren't tough, you could be in trouble. It will start to harden really quickly. You have to do it while it's soft, but as soon as it hardens, you should feel that now it is permanently in whatever shape you've put it in. So now that we're done forming it, we're going to go ahead and assemble the ring. I am using a very cute little resin flower. You could use anything else you wanted for the center, a button or a bead or something like that. And I'm using a really strong jewelry adhesive. So I'm going to put some of the jewelry adhesive in the center of the flower. And again, you do not have to have a flower to do this. You could do something in a totally different way. You could put a little baby in there for, you know, like a baby shower as opposed to a bridal shower. You could do something like put a skull in there. Anyway, you need a ring blank, and that's just what it sounds like, which is basically a ring with blank. Ooh, I'm dropping glue all over the place, so don't drop glue all over. But what you're going to do is apply, again, that same jewelry adhesive to the ring blank plate, and these come in all different kinds of colors and styles, and then you simply stick that ring right on top of that. And I do like to dry it upside down just because I feel like the pressure is a little bit better if it's that way. Just let it sit for a little while. Once it is hardened overnight, it's a perfectly durable, wonderful ring that you can wear around. I'm here in ScanNCut canvas, and I'm going to go ahead and create the card file. So it's super easy to do. We're simply going to go to My Projects, because remember, we saved that file, and I'm going to click the Edit button. And once I do that, I'll be taken into the file, and you'll be able to see it on the screen right there. And the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to select it, and then we're going to go ahead and create an offset line. So from the Edit menu, I'm going to choose Offset Line. Now you can adjust the settings any way you want. I'm just going to leave them as they are, and I'm going to say OK. And you'll see a lot of lines show up, and so we want to get rid of everything except the offset line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to carefully go ahead and grab it. Oops, I got two of them. I can see that by the double dotted lines. Let me grab in the middle. There you go. That is all that I want. So I'm going to go ahead now and select everything else just by dragging over it, and then I'm going to go up to the trash can icon to delete it. Now, I actually want to have two of these to make my card. So from the Edit menu, I'm choosing Duplicate. And I will get a second identical one, and I'm going to try to line them up with a slight overlap. I don't have to eyeball it because I can select both of them, and then again from the edit menu I'm going to choose the horizontal alignment tool, and now I know those are perfectly aligned plus overlapped. So back to the edit menu we go, where I'm going to choose the welding tool, and now ta-da, I have my card base. I also want to go ahead and add back that doily pattern because we are going to be using that, and there it is, and I know that it fits perfectly onto my card because that offset line has been created. So I am ready now to just go ahead and download this and send it on over to my ScanNCut machine, and then we're going to get ready to cut it out. I'm using two different papers, so I have two different mats. I have a lightweight white cardstock and a heavyweight gold cardstock, and because I'm using the two different weights of papers, I can't cut the two files at the same time. I have to cut them separately. So let's go over to the machine where we're going to cut the white paper out first, and I'll show you how to separate it. Now, you wouldn't need to do this step if you were cutting everything out of the same weight of paper. So from pattern, I'm going to choose the wireless button and retrieve the file we sent over. There it is. So I only want to cut out the white doily. I want to get rid of the card. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete that out. And once I have it, I'm simply going to drag it down into the corner, and I'm going to get all of my cutting settings ready. So I am going to leave my cut speed at a 1, but the pressure I'm going to bring down to a 0 because this is a thin cardstock. I have a standard blade set to a 5. I'm going to unload this mat, and I'm going to grab the one that has all the gold paper on it. And now we need to do a little bit of adjusting to the file. So I'm going to go home, say OK, grab that file again. And this time I want to grab that doily, delete that part out, and I want to add some text. So I want to put the couple's initials, and you can pick the kind of lettering that suits you the most. I feel like this is a nice one for a wedding. So I'm just going to use their initials, which are R. And then I'm going to do an ampersand, which should be located under the numbers. Here you go. If I can just find it, there it is. And go back to the letters and hit J, Romeo and Juliet. Okay. And now say set. Here it is. It's obviously too large, so I need to resize it, which is easy enough to do. Make it nice and petite. I also want to add a little bit more love. So from the built-in shapes, I'm going to grab a heart, but not any old heart. I want a fancy scalloped heart. And again, it's obviously way too big, so I'm going to make it a tiny little petite thing. I love that you can just touch everything on the screen to see exactly what it's going to look like. So once I have these pieces, I'm going to drag them into place where I know they're going to fit onto the paper I have and cut out. I also am going to add a test cut to make sure that my settings are correct on this heavier cardstock. Drag that down into the corner. So what are the settings that I'm using for something that's heavier? I'm going to up the pressure to a 5, keep the speed at a 1, and I've now set my standard blade to a 7.5. So let's do the test cut and see how it goes. Oh, cut came out perfectly. I guess I'm just going to press go. Now that we're done cutting, it's time to go ahead and grab all our pieces, and we are going to assemble our card. Even though it's not perforated here, this card will fold easily because that's a natural bridge. So you simply fold it in half, and you can use your thumb to crease it, and now you have a card. So let's decorate the front of our card. I'm taking my doily, and I've run all my little embellishment pieces through an adhesive machine. And that just adds adhesive to the back of these delicate pieces, which otherwise can sometimes be difficult. So I'm going to take my R and my J. Romeo and Juliet, so romantic. And now let's put the ampersand right here. Everything touches and overlaps. It looks great. And for a fun touch, even though I put adhesive on the back, I might actually give this a little foam dot, the heart, to give it a little bit of a rise. I think that'll look cute. Put it right at the top like that. And in fact, why don't we put foam adhesive on the back of the doily as well? I think that'll be super duper cute. The thing about foam adhesive is it's one of those things that makes your paper projects, it literally elevates them. It just takes it to another level. So I have my card front, and this should fit perfectly. I'm kind of lining it up visually just to make sure. Push in the middle. And so boom, just like that, I've got this card that's ready to use. For our final project, we're going to make this really cute bride badge, and it's really simple to do. So I'm in ScanNCut Canvas. Let me tell you what I have here in this file in ScanNCut Canvas. I did a search online for free rosette SVG files, and that's what this long strip with the perforations and this little seal are. Then I took one of the design that we've been using, plus I added the word bride to a second version of it, and then using the built-in shapes, I simply welded a square, or a rectangle rather, to a pennant shape to make these two tabs. So that's how easily this file came together, and now I'm ready to go ahead and download it, and let's get cutting. We're going to cut it all out of the same paper, so it's perfect that it's grouped together. So ScanNCut transfer, and we can head right over the machine to do that. I'm grabbing that file that we just sent over, and because we're cutting the exact same paper that we just did, I don't need to adjust any of my settings. I just need to make sure everything's going to fit onto my paper, and then press cut and start. I'm going to unload the mat, and let's pull all our parts out. So I have all my pieces, and it's time for assembly. The first thing is to make the rosette. So this has these perforation lines in it. That makes it really easy to basically accordion fold. So it doesn't matter whether you go back or front first, you just have to make sure to do the opposite on each one. And I'm just folding back and forth and back and forth. Once it's accordion folded, I want to put it together to form a ring. So what I'm going to do is actually slip one end. Can you see that? Slip one end into the other. So I'm going to take some adhesive dots, and that's a very strong adhesive, and I'm going to, because this is going right in here, I'm putting this onto the lip edge, and then I'm going to fold that dot over, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm dragging it with me here, but I'm going to do the same thing right here. Then I fold to create that ring, slipping that piece over that one and pinching it essentially into the fold so that it creates this nice ring. Now, there's one side that looks like a picket fence and has these spikes, and there's another side that's flat. I'm going to push the flat side to the center, and you can see it here on the counter. That's what creates the rosette. However, to make it stay like this, you can see it's a little recalcitrant. It doesn't want to stay like that. That's where we're going to be using this seal and this other side. So I'm using foam adhesive, which is a nice strong adhesive, and I'm actually going to stack a couple pieces of foam adhesive together. You can decide how high you want it. I like a little bit of height. If you want it really tight, you would use fewer. I place my ring on top, and I push down to create that rosette. Here you go. So it's right around the foam adhesive. Let me get my hand out. Now I'm going to take the seal on the other side, and I'm pushing it down onto that foam adhesive, essentially now creating a sandwich. So now I have this bride. If I put it directly on here, it doesn't show that much. I want to create a little space. So once again, I'm going to use foam adhesive to give me that space, just in little pieces above and below. And if you weren't making this for a bridal shower, if you were making it for a birthday or for a prize ribbon, you could put somebody's name, you could put anything you wanted, first, second, third place. Now when you put it on here, I think it's important to not put it so that it's exactly the same, but sort of off-center the two doilies so they don't exactly line up. And now if I hold this up, you can see that distance really, really helps to give it something special. And you can see how good it looks. So now we need to finish it. So I want to use an aggressive adhesive, and you can see I've been putting some adhesive dots on here simply by pressing down to release them. Then onto the back, I'm wedging it slightly under this little rosette to hide those ends, which are a little bit ugly. And I'm going to do the same with the other tail now. Let's get some adhesive dots on there. And you could make these out of real ribbon if you wanted. I like the sort of monochromatic, and I thought if somebody wanted this to last for a really long time. And then of course you want to slightly change the angle on the second one to make it look a little more rakish. Once that's done, flip it over, and now you have your lovely bride. And if you did like I did and it's slightly off center, guess what? You can actually, it's paper, you can just sort of shift it around and it will come around right to the center where you want it to be. And now there you go, that's a little bit better. So the last step, I have a pin back here. And all I'm going to do is take a jewelry adhesive, put a dot on here, and put it on the back. You could also use Velcro or anything else to finish it off. But when you're done, you can see whether you're looking at the front or the back, it's a star gold bride. Look how many amazing projects we created from just one design. Your ScanNCut is a versatile tool, and I encourage you to use it and to try things, different materials, different ideas. There's so much that you can do. For more tips, tricks, and tutorials, be sure to visit my blog at balzerdesigns.typepad.com. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and visit the ScanNCut website at scanncut.com.